I want to talk about a time when I first joined a team and attended a sprint review. I was quite new to the business and was trying to sit back and take it all in. A team member was presenting a screen. They were talking through the various changes that had been made, and they were trying to explain a flow that was unintuitive at best. I questioned the logic of the screen that they implemented, and the response I got was this: the user should know to click that. Well, this person hasn't met someone like my dad. This is my dad. He's 60 years old and he loves downloading. My dad uses the word download for everything. Anything to do with any device, anything he does online, to him is downloading, even uploading. He calls internet banking downloading. He downloads Facebook every time he logs in. And he calls me on the phone and says, "Cal, I need you to look at my computer. I can't download Facebook." Speaking of Facebook, my dad doesn't realise that he can post on anyone else's wall, apart from his own. So he posts happy birthday messages to people on his own wall without tagging them. So I turned 30 in November, and that's a big milestone. Well, I thought it was. So usually he calls me on my birthday. I was in New York and he in Australia, and I thought it rather odd that he still hadn't contacted me. So about a week later, I spoke to him on the phone, and I mentioned that he forgot my birthday, my 30th birthday. And he claimed it was too hard to work out the time difference, but he did post happy birthday on Facebook. So I wanted to prove him wrong, so I went to my Facebook, had a look through the various happy birthday messages, nothing there. So I went to his wall, scrolled back to my birthday, and there it was. Happy 30th birthday, Cal and Rowston. Enjoy New York. While I was there, I had a look around. This wasn't the first time this has happened. There was Ange, Renee, Sally Dalby, Michael Ferris, and this is an interesting one. He must have liked Foxy. That's a real screenshot. I'm not sure what he thought was going on when it was his birthday. So all these posts started appearing on his wall. 38 in total, which is not bad for a 60-year-old. And it's not just birthdays. He started collecting charity donations for a run. Again, he was acknowledging people on his own wall. He was even elaborating. Enjoy the rest of your holidays. It certainly is a great cause. In September, he posted this, followed by this. Doesn't really worry me that he posted the same image 3 times. The scariest part was his discovery of LOL. So if we go back to the original statement, the user should know to click that. Well, I think my dad's proof that the user doesn't always know. My first thought when hearing this was frustration. Was it really happening? However, I left that meeting realising that there was a huge disconnect between design and development. How can we possibly create good products when, as team members, we don't even understand each other and don't even appreciate each other's roles? Where's the empathy? So my name's Cal, and tonight I'm going to talk about empathy. As designers, we're forever talking about empathy. We question how a customer would feel when navigating a screen, how they would feel when they would encounter a problem online, how they would feel when a service isn't available to them, and how they would feel throughout various aspects of their journey. However, we rarely talk about empathy within our teams. The various people within the companies we work for, the person who sits either side of us every day when we step into the office, the people who write our user stories, the people who prioritise our work, people who gather our data, people who write acceptance criteria, people who code our designs, the people who test our designs, and the people who send our designs live. How can we create good products if we don't understand each other? So tonight I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of understanding each other and caring about your colleague. There are 3 things I want you to take away from this talk. I want you to believe that it's important that you understand your colleagues. I want you to know that building trust isn't easy, but it's worth it. And I want you to respect the limits of your colleagues' knowledge. The theme of the night is creating a creative culture within a company. Many businesses think that a creative culture is simply having a design department that hires a bunch of creatives. A couple of UX designers, a few UI designers, and a UX lead or a manager that they report to. A creative culture doesn't come from the number of designers, and it's certainly not a switch that management can switch on and the business suddenly heads in a different direction. It needs to be a shared understanding from within the teams, the people who do the grunt work. It's an environment where a designer values a developer like they do another designer. An environment where a designer pairs with a developer to make some changes in code. An environment where anyone can express their views without fear of speaking out of turn. A creative culture is when senior staff come to you with a problem, not a solution. It's an environment where no one is content with good, they aim for great. My first job in UX was somewhat misleading. I was working for a large health insurer with a very large digital team. I was initially hired as a web solution designer, and thanks to a corporate restructure and management wanting more specialised roles within the teams, I landed myself a UX role. We had 4 Scrum teams, each with an end-to-end UX designer, all reporting to a UX lead. We had a digital BA, design-focused front-end developers, back-end developers, product owner, QA, Scrum Master. At the time, I thought this was normal. This was new to me. Our teams were cohesive. We drilled down to the core problems before talking solutions. We started lean and we released MVPs. We gathered data and iterated based on the findings. The entire Scrum team joined in on sketch sessions. They read journey maps. We even had a developer or 2 at most usability testing sessions. They put analytics on elements without me even asking. They read and produced reporting, and they would fight for design decisions even in my absence. I thought this was normal. Then I switched jobs. I went to an even bigger company, a large telecommunications company. So this company had a university-style campus with over 7,000 staff. They had many Scrum teams, project teams, app-specific teams. They were very advanced in their processes. The problem was that their processes were different to mine. The Scrum team sat on a different floor of a different building. The designers were both part of the Scrum and project teams, but we sat with marketing and communication. As much as I love being surrounded by designers, it's not great for getting shit done. The business employed Lean and UX in a very efficient manner. We used to gather stakeholders, draw on a whiteboard, take a photo of our phone, and the developers would use that to code using components from the style guide. Their processes were very different to mine, but they weren't necessarily wrong. It was very efficient and provided consistency across the various sites. They had a very strict style guide, and if you wanted to break a pattern, you better have a very good reason. Then came agency life. That was a shock to the system. I was joining this as a sole UX designer at this particular agency. They had various UX designers come over the years, but most of it was outsourced. And I came just after the business had decided to bring development in-house. It's an agency, and lots of agencies are dictated to by their clients. A client would find an issue with a feature and will propose a change. In order to keep the client happy, the product owners and senior managers would instruct that change, and the developers would act on it. We would attend sprint showcases and reviews and see the latest piece of software that had been released for the first time. Sometimes a sight for sore eyes. It's not as if the developers were happy with the situation. They didn't want to be working on the same thing over and over. It wasn't until a screen needed colouring in or the client was unhappy with the way something looked that the designers would be consulted. It was as if the designers were an optional step in the process. So after a few sprint reviews, it was clear that something had to be done. I didn't just feel sorry for the client, I felt sorry for the business, but most importantly, the team. Everyone wants to do good work. It wasn't the people that were failing, it was time to come together and form a solid process. The design team believed we could do more to educate the business to fully understand where we could help and where our involvement started and finished. We wanted everyone to know that design isn't just what you see on the surface. It's the process of understanding business needs, user goals, technological constraints, and pulling that together to create a workable solution. We wanted to be engaged early in the process and have regular contact with the client and stakeholders rather than receiving secondhand feedback. As designers, naturally, we're very visually oriented, so we decided to start work on a poster. We discussed roles and responsibilities with the Scrum teams, the product owners, project managers. We iterated and repeated. This showed the business we were serious, but best of all, it was created through collaboration. We had a large poster printed and placed on the wall where people would walk past it daily. It was a conversation starter. This helped our campaign of building a closely aligned design and development team. The document we produced details the tasks the design team would undertake in an end-to-end project and who we would interact with at each stage of the process. We had clearer responsibilities, we were happier because we were designing better software, and the developers were happy because they were releasing better software. We had formed stronger relationships with the team, and we were all better off for it. So how do you build stronger relationships? You often hear people who have been in the industry talk about the good old days, the days when developers were responsible for the entire solution, from design through to testing. It's no surprise there's pushback when a designer turns up and says, we need to be involved in the entire process, from problem exploration through to sign-off. How would we feel if a new role came along and said, hey guys, you're no longer responsible for wireframing. We own that now. Well, that would suck. We need to keep this in mind, especially when dealing with those who have been in the industry for a long time or those who aren't used to working in large cross-functional teams. As designers, not only do we attempt to take ownership of various aspects of the software lifecycle, we also try to make people care about it. Here's how a job description reads for a full-stack developer: a bachelor's degree in computer science or related field, knowledge of multiple technologies, including but not limited to HTML, XML, JavaScript, SQL, has to be proficient in DevOps, has to have a passion for code quality, believes in working in 10 times productivity. What it doesn't usually say is must care about the design process, must let the designer set the direction, must sketch with the designers, must attend usability testing sessions. It's no surprise it's difficult to build a creative culture when the tasks required to do so are outside of their job description. If someone asked me to get excited about QA testing, in all honesty, I would struggle. Yet we are asking others to care about creativity as much as we do. How is that fair? We need to empathise with our colleagues. We don't have to be QA testers, but we must respect them. We must show that we acknowledge that it's as important as anything else in software development. I love QAs. They think in ways that my brain isn't capable of. They find flaws before software is released so that the user doesn't have to. We must respect their passion, their dedication, and respect that they have more of an interest in their job than they do in ours. So some tips for building relationships. Explore interests. Find a common ground with your colleague. Might be England beating Scotland in the rugby. Maybe it's disdain for Trump. Might be the latest episode of Game of Thrones, bitching about the British weather, complaining about the Central Line in summer, or the new burger place that opened down the road. We all have something in common. Just ask questions. Ask about their work history. Find out what they've worked on in the past, what their favourite project has been, what they're good at, and also what they dislike doing. And welcome criticism. Everyone loves to have a vent or a bitch. Let the people be heard. Pitch and critiques are a great way to receive feedback. You print out your designs, you put them up on a wall, and you pitch your idea. Walk them through the screens. Then each person takes a turn in providing feedback. And you need to stand there without interrupting and without defending the design. The earlier you do this, the better. Your designs will improve. A team I was working on a few years back felt that they should have the same opportunity to provide feedback that I offered the other designers. They also felt they should be involved early in the process, and I certainly agreed. They suggested it be called Wine and Dine. Once a sprint, a team member would bring in some snacks, would get a meeting room, and again would put the designs up on the wall, and the team would provide feedback. We'd then have a discussion about them. This allows the team to feel like they're involved in the process from the beginning, and it's something we collectively own. It also means that they'll back you up in future discussions. It's very helpful to have them on side, especially when presenting to stakeholders outside the team, or when questions are asked about the design in your absence. So everyone's worked in a team before, and chances are something better was working at that job than it is at this one now. Here's where it comes in handy to know your team members. Instead of speaking up at a meeting and say, at my previous job, I did this, you can say, hey Kate, I remember you were talking about the app that you worked on at your last role. You said it worked really well. Can you tell us about it? So instead of gloating, you've given your colleague praise, and then suddenly you have two people on the same side of the argument. And you can even suggest that the two of you sit down later to discuss it in more detail. Don't be precious. Take on feedback. At first it hurts, but this will pass. Not asking for feedback is just delaying the process. You're going to get feedback whether you like it or not. Getting feedback early means you can do something about it before it's released. Have one-to-one time, so go and sit with your colleague. Chat, start sketching some ideas, ask for feedback on your design, then ask them to sketch something. Get them comfortable with the process before you ask them to join group sketching. How many of you would be comfortable if someone said, we're going to sit down and work out some equations on paper, come and join us? I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable doing so, but that's no different to asking non-designers to come and sit down and sketch. Worse still, we ask them to present their sketches in front of a group. Everyone who's ever taken a shower has had an idea. It's the person who gets out of the shower, dries off, and does something about it who makes a difference. So I'm not suggesting you should shower with your teams. I like this quote because it emphasizes that everyone can have an idea, and we need to recognize creativity is more than design. A creative culture isn't table tennis tables. It's not Nespresso machines, it's not bean bags, and it's not chinos, jeans, or trainers. I love all these things, but they certainly help people enjoy their time at work. But a creative culture will thrive when we understand each other, when we know what excites each other, when we understand each other's strengths, their weaknesses, and our goals, and when we all share the same view of success. A creative culture is formed when we show empathy, not just for the customer. Only then will we have a truly collaborative, creative environment where we can produce solutions that we can be proud of. And so that people like my dad know where to click and can wish me happy birthday. Thank you. Any questions? Come on, someone can put their hand up.
Does your dad know how to say happy birthday on Facebook?
Does he what, sorry?
Happy birthday on Facebook.
It's a good question. I'll have to call him. He might not have known that he had 38 people wish him happy birthday. Any others? Seth?
How does creating empathy differ when you've got a cross-cultural team and a team that's separated by geography?
As in my reference to sitting on different levels?
Well, I think physically, but you're working for Fjord where you have an international team.
Correct.
When you try and bring people together across continents, what techniques do you use or tactics do you use to create empathy in that situation?
Very good question. Slightly different because most of Fjord is the designers, and I know I was referring to developers a lot in that sense, but I can't really speak on behalf of Fjord, but I'll try and keep a general statement. I think just regular contact, and not just about work. I think talking to someone about work issues all the time is kind of draining, and I think the others touched on it. You need time to get away from work and talk about other things. So talk to them on a personal level. So I think most businesses have some form of chat online now. Like I chat to my colleagues regularly, like whether they be co-located or not, and ask them about things that are not work-related. So I think it's just getting to know your team members. And I think the separation is not great, so being in contact with those internationally is difficult, but if you can come together in person at some stage and get to know them and find out what they're interested in, I think it helps, because then when you're distant, when you're separated, you can then continue those conversations that you've already begun. Thank you. Any others?
Do you think developers can be designers? On your slide of lead developers, you crossed out that you have to lead by the designer. But what happens if the developer has a comeback to that? They have a better idea.
What slide were you referring to? Job description. Okay.
You have to follow the designer, but like, what happens if the developer has a better idea?
Oh, definitely employ it. So what I was meaning with the job description is they're not empowered, or sorry, they've got no motivation to take part in the roles that we care about. So we like sketching, we like doing journey maps, and we like doing usability testing and all those sort of things. And they see that time as time away from doing things that are in their job description. So a lot of them think very logically because they're developers, right? They think programmatically. And so a lot of them think, okay, so this is my job description. These are the tasks I need to get done. This is how many points I need to do this sprint. I need to get that done. This part isn't in my job description. I don't need to do that. So I think it's building those relationships and getting them to care about it, because one thing that I've found that developers don't like doing, it is work on the same thing over and over. If they build something and release it, and then you do some testing after that and take it back to them, they hate working on that stuff again. So it's getting them on site early, and almost you can have usability, you can have sketching sessions, and you can facilitate them, but not even take part in it. It can be their design. Like anyone, I talked about not doing equations, but anyone can actually sketch something out. They could write it out rather than sketching it. So I think it's letting them take ownership. So to answer your question, I think, yes, if they have an idea that's better, let them.
Yeah, it's about bringing everyone along that design journey.
Exactly. Any others?
Could we thank
Thank
all our
you.
speakers, please?